Alright, what's up, gamers? We're bringing you another video. And by we, I mean me, of course. Woo. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking like a champ and start talking like a banger. Robust Spirit Soulfist. What am I doing? It's the guide, part 2. And by part 2, I mean just remaking my old Robust Spirit guide because I'm better at speaking English and sort of making content and videos. Well, I mean, I guess depending on who you ask, some people say I'm garbage, but it is what it is. Robust Spirit Soulfist. This is my pride and joy, I guess. I don't know, man. Robust Soul Spister. Spec crit. These are the stats you're going to be wanting for Robust Fister. Robust Fister, very burst-oriented class. Yeah, we'll get into more of that later, more specifically what I mean by that, but you have periods where you do big damage and then periods where you do quite literally no damage, so if that sounds like something you're interested in, maybe Fister's for you. The set we use is Hallucination for Robuster Fister. Cards, obviously LOS, the best. Lost Wind Cliff can be quite good because we are forced to run Keen Blunt and we have pitiful crit. So if you're in a group with no crit synergy, for example, Lost Wind Cliff can actually be quite good. Don't sleep on it, that's all I'm gonna say. Same goes for EO, even more so for EO, but this ain't an EO video, but I think y'all know that. Engravings, we got the standard quote-unquote meta build. You got your Robuster, you get Robust 3, love that skill. You get your Grudge 3, you do the big damage, what more do you need? You get the Adrenaline 3, because we need the crit. I mean, what more do you say? Adrenaline. You get the Keen Blunt 3, because it's damage, you know, the big damage. We do the big damage. There's also no other really super great damage engraving options, so you kind of have to take Keen Blunt. Then for the last one, we take Cursed. Pretty standard setup here. You can swap Adrenaline for Precise Dagger if you prefer. Precise Dagger has a little bit of a lower damage ceiling, and Adrenaline is overall going to perform better, but Adrenaline is more expensive by quite a bit. So if you're going for a budget, Precise Dagger is a fine option. It is just a little bit worse. Not significantly, just a little bit. We got that out of the way. Yeah, okay, so first, let's go over skills. The big one for skills, let's sort by equipped. So, there's a lot of different options you can take for Soulfist, despite what meta slaves will tell you, or people who just blindly follow guides without doing any critical thinking of their own. You have a good amount of wiggle room here. Crippling Barrier can be swapped out, Shadowbreaker can be swapped out. I've even seen some cases where Palm gets swapped out, though I think that might be trolling because Palm ends up being pretty high damage. For my skill point distribution, I go level 10 Force Orb, and then level 12 everything else. You can go 10 Crippling Barrier. If I was running this setup, the other option I could go is 10 Crippling Barrier, 12 Force Orb. Really, it doesn't end up mattering too much. As far as swap outs, obviously the big elephant in the room is the fact that I don't use Energy Blast. Why do I not use Energy Blast? I don't like Energy Blast, is the short and sweet of it. It feels clunky to use, and it requires quite a bit of investment that I do now have, so I could run Energy Blast if I really wanted to, and it would be okay. But what I mean by this is Energy Blast is very tight to fit into your energy release windows. We'll talk a bit more about energy release windows after this, but just know this. It is hard to fit 2 Energy Blasts into your rotation under perfect circumstances, unless you have high spec and high cooldown reduction gem. Something you probably will not have for a while if this is your main and it's your only character. Like I played it from. This was the character I started the game with, and it's the character I've still been playing. So while I could now swap to it, I'm so ingrained with Shadowbreaker, I just choose not to. And I have tested the difference between Shadowbreaker and Energy Blast, and the difference is there. Don't get me wrong. Energy Blast is more damage, but it's not by nearly as much as people like to say. And Shadowbreaker has positives of its own that people seem to completely disregard. Its weak point, its stagger, and the big thing, it has an execute function which you cannot test in Trixion. So whenever I do test Shadowbreaker versus Energy Blast, it's without the Predator tripod being activated. And another big thing that people really don't seem to consider is the cooldown of Shadowbreaker. It is a 16-second cooldown versus Energy Blast, which is a 30-second cooldown. What does this mean? This means you're actually able to fit in more Shadowbreakers despite it being outside of energy release windows or hype windows. So it's not super effective damage, but it's more damage than you would initially think. All of this combined makes Shadowbreaker not that much worse than Energy Blast, despite what everyone and their mother may tell you. For Energy Overflow, it's a completely different story. This is for Robust Spirit only. Do not apply this to EO. EO is a different beast. This is for Robust Spirit only. Understand? Okay. Now let's get with the rest of the skills. Overall, these are what you're going to want. You're going to always want to take Energy Release. You always need to take Merciless Pummel. Merciless Pummel is your biggest hitting ability aside from your Awakening. This is your biggest blaster. For tripods, you want 1, 3, 2. Energy Release. I take the Tenacity tripod because push immunity is good, and I've gotten used to it. You obviously can swap it for the cleanse if you want. It is what it is. But tripods and Energy Release, you want 2, 3, 1. Ready Attack is our burst thing, which is why Energy Release windows exist. Celestial Palm is another, I would say, required skill. Hard Hitter. I guess I'll just do it like this. You're going to want 1, 3, 1 for the tripods. Force Orb. I would also say this is a core skill because of its cooldown. It's low cooldown mixed with quick prep plus a high level cooldown gem. You can shit out Force Orbs. You're gonna want 1, 3, 1 for the tripods. Ignore my non-level 5 tripods. I'm lazy, okay? I forgot to do it when the tripod update came, and whatever. Leave me alone. Flash Step is mostly for mobility. You can also use Victory Shout. You can see mine is level 5 because you really don't need it. You just use Bolting Crash most of the time. Bolting Crash, well, with Flash Step, you're going to want excellent mobility, so 3, 3. Bolting Crash is not required, but I would say it's required just because it's a better counter, and it's also your synergy. So, you're going to want to be taking 3, 1, 1. You can swap the last tripod for aggressiveness for, like, Procol. It's a stun. Pretty good. Crippling Barrier. Again, you could swap this skill out for Energy Blast if you want to run Shadowbreaker. You could also swap Shadowbreaker out for Energy Blast if you also want to run Crippling Barrier. These are the two slots that you have some leeway with, in my opinion, of course. And I will also link the Community Soulfist guide down below. It's a lot of good information. It'll help you make decisions for yourself. Or you can just copy it if you want. Whatever. Up to you, man. For Crippling Barrier, though, you want 2, 3, 2. And Shadowbreaker, you want 2, 2, 1. Runes I have Overwhelm on Shadowbreaker, Galewind Purple on Crippling Barrier. I have Legendary Bleed on Bolting Crash. I have Quick Recharge on Flesh Step, Conviction on Force Orb, Judgment on Palm, Galewind Legendary on Pummel, and Galewind Purple on Energy Release. I run Conviction Judgment solely because I like sometimes getting lower cooldown on my Awakening. That's it. You don't need to do it. It's flex slots. I just do it because I'm funny like that. I look funny. I play funny. Energy release window. What is energy release window? It's this little funny thing. You move your hands and you go woosa, and then you get a buff. Energy release. Wowie. Crazy. Mostly we care about not necessarily the energy release buff itself, but ready attack, which you get from using it from the tripod. You do all your damage in that 6-second window. Make sense? So you're going to want to make sure you always do your abilities within that ready attack window from energy release. And you can see you have quite a bit of leeway to do it once you have high enough spec. Until you get high enough spec, though, it can feel quite bad to fit all your skills together because you'll be waiting on cooldowns. I would say it becomes very, very smooth above 1700 spec. It becomes playable above 1600 spec is about what I would say. I would say level 7 cooldown gems are mandatory. I have a bunch of level 10s just because I've rolled them. I didn't actually buy these. Don't ask. They just smooth out the gameplay if you mess up. In some cases, though, like Shadowbreaker and Force Orb, it allows you to get multiple in, increasing your damage a little bit, because you're going to be using them outside of hype. For a basic rotation, though, it's pretty simple. Let's do a basic rotation just to show you guys. So, from 0, the absolute ground up, you're going to want to flash step 3 times to build adrenaline. Then I hype, and then bolting crash for lower cooldown and bolting crash. You can bolting crash and then hype first. It's up to you. Let me reset that, though, just because I wanted to explain that. So, you flash step 3 times, hype, bolting crash, energy release, merciless pummel. I do orb into palm, then I do Shadowbreaker, then I hold crippling barrier for a bit, and make sure you let go before the buff expires. So, that little burst I just did is, like, the core. That's all you have to try to do. So, we energy, fuck me. I'm not even going to try to speak. I'm just going to do what I just said I was going to do. And you see, I'm really close to actually being able to open with Force Orb. And fitting 2 Force Orbs into my full rotation. I might be able to do it if I had Yearning buff and I had the max tripod. But that's why I say Force Orb and Shadowbreaker can start to be really high damage dealers, because you're able to use 2 Force Orbs in 1 energy release window, which ends up being giga damage. But okay, I'll just do 1 full rotation for you. Flash step 3 times, hype, bolting crash, release, pummel, orb, palm, breaker, hold barrier until, let it go. Then you just kind of chill. Crash, orb. I do not Shadowbreaker, I energy release, Shadowbreaker, pummel, hold barrier for a second, orb, palm, boom. That's it. That's it. If you want to open with Awakening, you basically just do the same thing. Well, actually, I never remember the most optimal opening. No. I think the most optimal opening if you're going to rip Awakening off the rip is you flash step 3 times, orb, pummel, palm, bolting crash, energy release, Awakening, orb, breaker. I think that's the most efficient. It's something like that. The community guide goes over it very specifically if you're interested in that. Overall, though, I think this is a more condensed and concise version of my original guide. This gets you through what you need to know. I'll do a 1-minute DPS test just to end it off here, just for funsies, because I'm sure a lot of people care about that. No Awakening. I am just gonna... Well, I won't have the hallucination buff, because I'm sure people will go, but you had the hallucination buff. It's not a real meaningful test anyways. Who cares? But you can see Soulfist, very burst-oriented, and it's a very enjoyable class, despite it starting off absolutely dreadfully. It plays very well once you get it to a certain point. Until you get it to that point, though, quite miserable. You'll see what I mean by being able to use Shadowbreaker and Orb outside of your energy release windows for a little bit of extra dam. One more Shadowbreaker to end us off here. Overall, that's what Soulfist is looking like. Pretty good. I suggest you make one if it looks interesting to you. It's just not an easy class to get into. Alright, that's the video. Brother Chris out. Like the video if you like it, dislike it if you dislike it, leave a comment down below, letting me know your thoughts on how great this video was, because honestly, it was a banger. And make sure you subscribe if you made it this far and you like seeing daily Lost Art content. Consider becoming a YouTube member. It's like a Patreon sub, Twitch sub. Supports me, supports the channel. Smiley face. Bye!